How's everybody doing? Good? Cool. What's up, Litiquest? Real quick, can we actually give a round of applause for the Litify team? Because you guys have been a very resilient group. It's been awesome. This event every year is phenomenal, and you guys do a great job. So, welcome. A lot of what we've done at Reyes Brown Law in terms of marketing has felt like an everlasting climb of a mountain. Well, I don't really know what it's like to climb a mountain. I grew up in northern Minnesota, where, there's the old joke of like, if your dog runs out the door, you can watch it run away for a week, and if you stand on top of a box, you can watch it run away for another week. And then North Dallas is not like Austin. So, it's really not hilly by any means. It's pretty flat. So, but I do know one person that does, and it's Angel Reyes. So, Angel actually recently climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, which I wanted to kind of give a little bit of a plug for him, because I thought it was pretty cool, and actually pretty inspiring. So like one of the big things here at our firm is we want to try and inspire our people. We want to do that with some of the technology that we do, and I get inspired by being able to build the technology to also make my life a lot easier, because it's a lot. And any marketer can tell you that. Anybody that's trying to grow a firm can tell you that. It's not easy, especially with scale. As you continue to grow, your processes need to change. And Emily Merriman actually had a Litiquest, I think it was this year, and she made a comment saying dashboards are always fluent, right? And so if they're fluent and they're fluid, they're always going to change, and you're always going to be trying to find new ways to do new things. And one of the biggest issues that we ran into before we went live with Litify was we were trying to do things in a very static fashion. It was not dynamic. It was not helping us. It was a lot of time being wasted. It's the sporadic month-to-date, year-to-date look-backs. We run into a lot of issues where, we ran into a lot of issues where it was nonstop pulling of spreadsheets, nonstop looking at, different applications, having multiple screens up. I still have multiple screens, but it's all Litify at this point. So, but the countless hours that we're spending compiling, formatting, and analyzing data from so many different spreadsheets and so many different places, it gets really, really taxing. And so it's tough for us to be able to do that stuff, especially quickly. If you're trying to do a month-to-date look back, or you're trying to do a year-to-date look back, like how are our campaigns actually operating, right? And so the whole goal is, if you can understand where your campaigns are at any given time, and Angel will tell you, he'll walk into my office and he'll be like, hey, where are things at? It looks a little slow today. And it's like, okay, I now kind of regret building such fast dynamic dashboards because I have him in my office asking me that. I'm like, okay, cool, fair enough. So, but it holds my feet to the fire. And at the same time, the only way that we can grow is by accountability. And that's what Litify gives you, especially when you start building things inside of Litify. So the beauty of it is before we had Litify, we had a lot of risk for potential data inaccuracies. And that's where a lot of the problems came in, where we would try to be compiling all these spreadsheets and the manual attribution inside of these spreadsheets to try and calculate as much of whatever our cost per case is, whatever our cost per lead is. We wanted to know where the rubber meets the road at any given time, and it was an absolute fight to do that all the time, especially from, I don't know. How many of you guys all came from needles? Sorry, you guys are in the same boat as us, so, but welcome to the promised land. So how many of you are still on needles? Good. So, one joke that I always like to say is scale, no thanks, ignorance is bliss. Like if that's you, if you don't really want to scale, you're probably on the wrong platform, because even if you jump on Litify, it helps you get there and get to where you need to go. So show me where the transparency is. I enjoy that Angel actually comes into my office and checks in on me, and he checks in on what the leads are doing, and he checks in on how many signed cases come in. Every time a case signs, there's an automation that goes out, goes to me and some of my team members, especially the ones that are accountable for different things. So like if we have a social media team, they get notified every time we sign a case. If we have a Google Ads team, they get notified every time that we sign a case. It's really important for us to know that stuff in real time, like, hey, our campaigns are clicking today, like let's go find out why, right? And then the last thing is I got application fatigue, which I already kind of discussed, but it's taxing to constantly have to remember logins for a million different things. And I mean that very literally, unless you're logged into different stuff. And there's been a few times where I've forgotten a laptop or whatever, and I'm like, I now got to remember all my passwords. So my Google Chrome takes care of that, which is nice, but to the same degree, I'd rather not have to rely on that, and I'd rather have it all in one place, and I know that singular password. So there you go, Angel. I got you 2 times. But anyway, so what I kind of wanted to do with this entire presentation is talk about the timeline, talk about where we started and where we're at now and how we got here. So the first thing I don't even really want to cover because we've all been there. It's the final month of It That Shall Not Be Named, aka Needles. For Harry Potter fans, that's another good one. But the biggest thing that we made a decision in January of 21, because we went live in July of 20, and that was July of 20, so we went to January of 21, and we all looked at each other and said, all right, I'm done with these year-to-date look-backs. Let's actually do something that's more conducive because we have the technology now to have that ability as we continue to go forward throughout the year, and let's refine that and let's make it better. And this is gonna give me the worst PTSD if I don't faint. I got so tired of looking at this stuff all the time. It was exhausting because I could give you guys an hour and you still wouldn't realize what the hell's going on, but that was me building it and then trying to explain it to Angel. I'm like, basically, I'm speaking Chinese. So, but that's just what it was, and being able to take a look at okay, where's our cost per signed case at? Great, cool, $2,400, but $6,600 over here. It's like, okay, that would have been nice to know earlier. We could have fixed that. So we moved to the first iteration of month-to-date speed reports, which, to my better judgment, it took me 3 months until we finally were like, all right, we need to figure something out. But it was still in a spreadsheet, and I'm not happy about it. However, here's the first iteration of it. It wasn't ideal, but it allowed us to actually calculate our cost, and then allowed us to calculate our cost per signed case by each given channel, right? So our Google channel was $3,700. So it's like, okay, well, we really got some ground to make up here. So we started working on that, and we went to a marketing budget mentality shift because we now had the ability to kind of look inside of Litify, and we pulled the data quicker than it used to be with Needles. And we used to be able to grab the Google Ads data a little bit quicker just because we'd log in faster. It was hyperlinked, whatever, right? Simple stuff, just tiny fixes. But all of the data coming to populate this spreadsheet was coming from Litify directly, which made things a little bit easier. So then from that point, we said, that's too fucking high, excuse my French. But we didn't want to deal with it anymore. And we wanted it to be much, much lower. So we changed our budget and we decided to say, you know what, instead of taking a look and saying how much we're willing to spend, let's actually sit down and take a look at what are we willing to pay per case, and if we're in that realm, hammer it down, right? It's the same concept. And I mean, I come from a fairly country upbringing from a town of 6,000, so when there's rain and storms like today, you bring the cows in. When it's really nice and sunshiny, you let the cows out, right? And that's the whole mentality that we had, is when it's really easy, you start summiting that hill. Right, you start summiting that mountain. And so we shifted to being able to kind of look at this stuff directly inside of Litify and being able to see, okay, great, cool, so this is what we want to look at. We started moving to higher scales. We started moving to higher numbers. Our PPC, we were bringing in 191 cases, and we got it down to $715 a case, which was kind of a big deal. That was probably one of our better months. And that was July of 22 when we decided to really kind of hammer down on marketing. And I had a conversation with Angel, and he said, what do we got to do to start moving things forward? I said, let's stop looking at the budget the same way, right? If we can pull reports on a daily basis and be able to see what our cost per MVA is, let's go from there. And so we only handle MVA and MVC cases. So like an MVA, MVC, motor vehicle accident, motor vehicle commercial cases. So trucking cases, if you got them, what's up? Anyways, so moving on. So the final thing that we've recently went live with, it was actually last year. It was last year where we, it was at Litiquest. And ironically enough, so this was actually supposed to be Rich Hill up on the stage right now. And I have a lot of respect for Rich Hill and Pocus Goodhead and everything that they're doing over in the UK. However, Rich Hill is also the individual that gave me the last missing piece of my dashboard to be able to build it all together in a dynamic fashion that automates everything where I don't have to touch it. And that is a dream. And so The features of our new dashboard that we built out was our high-level KPIs. So we have full transparency with KPIs with our shareholders that matter, and it lets them know where their money is going and if it's being spent wisely, not recklessly, right? So we looked at that $3,700 cost per signed case, way too high. That's where the rubber meets the road. That's what matters. It's not just about scale. It's about if it's scale at a fair value, right? So we wanted to make sure, we're still looking at this in terms of a business. We're not looking at it in terms of like, hey man, we got a case, great, but how much did that case cost you, right? So that's the challenge with marketing, is you never know exactly what your true cost per signed case is until you're actually able to do that. So one of the biggest issues that we kept getting frustrated with was the constant need for user interaction and updates to zero, essentially on where the rubber meets the road. So that's that cost per signed case. We wanted to make sure that we knew that it didn't take any user interaction, because if it's no user interaction, it's legitimate data. If there is no potential way that a human can fault or change the data, it's going to be accurate, right? And we can take a look at that and we can know that it's trustworthy, right? And that's the biggest thing for us, is making sure that there's data validation. And on top of that, there's the data scrape for speedy decisions. So data freedom. It's our ability to discredit and validate hunches with our campaigns within seconds from the data hitting our fingertips. And it's cutting the time that we spent compiling all of those old spreadsheets that were awful. And I mean, raise your hand if you guys have downloaded spreadsheets from Google Ads and been like, okay, now I gotta play with this. Yeah, but there's the marketers. Got you guys. But yeah, so we moved into this, and we have our actual cost per signed PPC case up on the dashboard at 100% accuracy directly from Google Ads. We've figured out an integration to be able to build into all of that campaign data flows directly into our system. And we can actually maneuver and manipulate that data because it's Litify. We looked at it differently because we saw that it was a tool. It wasn't just for dashboards. It was for a lot of other things. It's allowing us to be able to make more definitive decisions. So, I mean, we looked at a spend. So this was back October of 22. So I built this directly after we came back from Litiquest last year, when Rich Hill gave me the final little piece that I needed. And I tried to run wild with it and tried to see what I could do. And we ended up going, for the first month, we signed 441 cases. 286 of those were pay-per-click cases. And this also gave us our signed case forecasting. And we also were able to look at what our forecasting was for our spend. And if that was okay by Angel at any given time, we kept rolling. And if it was not okay by Angel, I had somebody knocking at my door and I was barricading it as fast as humanly possible. But we were also able to see what our actual high case count ratio was. So we started focusing on some of those other metrics. I also have an integration with 5-star client Google reviews, so we wanted to look at that and make sure that we were getting accurate Google reviews that were coming in, and those that can link to a matter or an intake, so then that way we know for a fact that they're not just, Joe Schmo giving us a review. We wanted to make sure that it was client reviews. So from there on, we got to look at a lot more fun things. We got to look at signed cases by spend date. We got to look at a lot of the top impression shares, a lot of the different average CPCs versus cost per signed case versus how much were we spending in a day and how efficient were we spending that day, right? So we started focusing on this. None of that would have been possible with any other service. I struggled just to find an API to be able to build this into Litify, let alone try to do that inside of some other system that's closed off and walled off because it doesn't have an open AI or an open API, which Litify does because it's built on Salesforce. And we tested it every day for an entire year. And so this was our most recent model. We spent damn near the exact same amount on total spend, and we generated severely more cases at $200 cheaper a case. Because it allowed us to look at things and make decisions much faster, it allowed us to be able to make the right calls at the right time. Because a lot of times what people do is when they're going and playing with their spreadsheets, they want to go and see what they want to see. However, with Litify, you see the things that you don't want to see. You see the ugly side of things, right? And so if I go back to here even, I have a whole report that tells me exactly the campaigns in jeopardy that are at cost per signed case levels that I'm not happy with. and it tells me that without me having to do anything. I just can change filters, and it gets there. And I have that in my face every day for an entire year. But what was the end result? What was the whole reason why we wanted to do this? And this was something that I had kind of dreamed of for a while, because I'm good at spreadsheets, but I'm good at spreadsheets because I have to be, and I didn't want to have to be anymore. I really wanted to be able to build something that did the work for me. And so instead of looking at Litify and Salesforce as just a reporting CRM, we looked at it like it was an actual powerful tool that we can use, right? So like we have CRMA, and there's a whole bunch of different things. We don't actually use CRMA. These are just built-in native dashboards, right? So Salesforce is the most powerful business tool, and I mean that in the most serious way. I've vetted out a million different pieces of software. Angel can attest to that as well. If you guys want to ask him, he sends me on a daily basis all these different software companies. A lot of our vendors, I've met with you guys already. Everybody here has great things to offer for sure. But there is nothing better than genuine just Salesforce built Litify. And it allowed us to get a grip on having the reality of our campaigns grant us the ability to have a firm hold on all of our campaigns, right? So the whole thing that we ran into an issue with was, okay, how do we do this stuff at scale when we were spending, a couple $100,000 a year, or a couple $100,000 a month, to now we wanted to spend almost $1 million a month, right? How do you scale that accurately and making sure that it actually doesn't get out of hand? Because if you give Google a lot of rain, Google will run with it, and it's kind of terrifying because I've seen it happen. But we always like to make sure that we learn from our mistakes, and so we're trying to build things that are essentially mistake-proof, right? And so that allows us to get to the dream continued. There's always room for more improvement, and we never want to stop working to innovate or expand or conquer the rest of Texas. I know that there's competitors in here. It's okay, we like you guys. So you guys are on Litify. As long as you guys are giving your clients good work, that's all I care about. So, and the final thing that we kind of really wanted to talk about was where you're at now is not where you're gonna end up. You guys saw our timeline where we started and where we are now. This has been a 3-year piece in the progress, right? 3.5 year. So, I mean, it's a constant evolution, and the beauty of having Litify and Salesforce is it allows you to actually get to a different level and have that potential to get to the different level that a lot of these other services don't have, right? And if we did it, you guys can too. I'm a kid from Podunk, Minnesota. I don't know if you guys know that, but if I can figure this stuff out, you guys can too. You just gotta find the right people that really wanna have that drive, and it's the same thing that Jonathan Stark was talking about, is finding the people in your firm and motivating them and helping them see the vision, because the ones that see the vision and the ones that wanna roll with you guys are gonna be the ones that figure this stuff out. Angel shared with me a vision a while ago, and I just kept running with it, and this is what we've gotten to, right? So, and it's about the journey, it's not about the destination. Embrace the whole thing, because that's gonna be when it's actually fun. And never stop climbing. But the biggest thing is if you're frustrated with whatever you have now, the best thing that I can recommend you doing is start to climb. It's one step after another. And as soon as you can get to where we're at, or if you're trying to get to different milestones, celebrate those milestones. Get excited about them. Get excited that life is gonna be a little bit easier, even if it's the tiniest little things. I mean, we were still using some spreadsheets, but it made our lives a lot easier until we got to a point now where we don't even use spreadsheets. So, but that's the biggest thing that I can say, is there's a mountain in front of you. In order to scale your firm, where's your first step? It's always marketing. Thanks, guys.